The following is a raw, unflinching, and massively expanded retelling of 6 real hunting encounters caught on camera, moments when ordinary men stepped into the wilderness expecting nothing more than a normal day of sport, and instead found themselves staring directly into the jaws of death itself. These are not Hollywood inventions or exaggerated campfire tales. Every single growl, every gunshot, every charging animal, every heartbeat-pounding second was filmed live by terrified hunters whose lives dangled by the thinnest possible thread. What you are about to read contains brutally detailed, skin-crawling descriptions of a massive brown bear exploding out of the trees at point-blank range, stray bullets slicing through the air only inches from human skulls, a seemingly normal deer turning feral and attacking again and again like something possessed, an entire pack of wolves circling a father and his young son inside a flimsy hammock shelter in the Alaskan frozen darkness, and a wounded wild boar charging with bone-crushing fury straight at the man who had just shot it. If you are reading this alone, if it is night outside your window, or if you value your ability to sleep peacefully afterward, stop right now and close this page. These true stories will burrow deep into your mind like splinters of ice and make every single rustle in the bushes, every shadow between the trees, every distant howl in the wind feel like the wilderness itself is coming for you. You have been warned. Let us begin on October 19th, 2022, with one of the most blood-freezing hunting videos ever uploaded to YouTube. A lone hunter deep in a remote, silent Russian forest was out with his dogs, moving cautiously through the thick undergrowth on what should have been nothing more than a routine day of tracking game. The air was cold and still, the trees towering overhead like silent guardians, and for the first several minutes everything felt perfectly ordinary. His dogs trotted ahead, sniffing the ground, tails wagging slightly. The hunter's breath came out in visible puffs in the freezing air. Then, without the slightest warning growl, without even a snapped twig to announce its presence, a massive brown bear, easily several hundred pounds of pure muscle, claws, and raw power, suddenly erupted from the dense bushes like a living nightmare and charged straight at him with terrifying speed. There was no time to think, no time to raise his rifle, no time to run. In that split second of pure primal terror, the hunter made the single most insane and courageous decision a person can make in the face of certain death. He froze completely still, planted his feet, locked eyes with the oncoming monster, and refused to move even an inch. His heart was hammering so violently he could feel it in his throat. Sweat poured down his back despite the freezing temperature. For several unbearable, stomach-dropping seconds that felt like an eternity, the bear kept coming, its enormous paws thundering across the forest floor, jaws wide open, eyes burning with rage, getting closer and closer until it was only a few terrifying feet away. The hunter could smell the animal's hot, rank breath. He could see every detail of its yellowed teeth and the rippling power in its shoulders. Just when it seemed absolutely certain that the bear was going to slam into him, knock him to the ground, and tear him apart in a bloody frenzy, the animal suddenly skidded to a halt, stared him down with one final heart-stopping glare, then turned sharply and disappeared back into the thick forest as quickly and silently as it had appeared. The hunter stood there afterward, legs shaking uncontrollably, barely able to breathe, his dogs whining in fear at his feet. He later admitted in the video that he had never been so close to dying in his entire life. If that bear had decided, in that final split second, to keep charging forward for even one more step, this footage would not have ended with a narrow escape. It would have ended in a gruesome, violent, blood-soaked tragedy captured on camera for the entire world to see. The raw, unfiltered terror in those few seconds still sends ice-cold chills racing down my spine every single time I watch it, because it proves that in the wilderness, the difference between life and death can be measured in nothing more than a single heartbeat and a monster's momentary hesitation. On April 15, 2017, a truly nightmarish and deeply disturbing piece of hunting footage surfaced from YouTuber Roderick Outdoors. He and 2 close friends were out in the woods turkey hunting, fully camouflaged from head to toe, sitting perfectly still in the brush, scanning the area with total concentration and focus. The morning light was soft and quiet. Birds were chirping. Everything felt completely normal and safe. Then, without any warning whatsoever, a single gunshot cracked violently through the air from directly behind them. One of the friends let out a sharp, terrified scream, The bullet had passed so unbelievably close that it had nearly taken his head clean off. All three men instantly exploded upward in pure panic, hearts slamming against their ribs, adrenaline flooding their bodies, frantically spinning around and trying to figure out exactly where the shot had come from and whether the unknown hunter even realized they were there. Their voices cracked with fear as they called out to each other, checking for blood, checking if anyone had been hit. Miraculously, no one was injured, but that single bullet had sliced through the air only inches away from ending a human life in the most sudden and senseless way imaginable. If the shooter had aimed even a fraction of an inch differently, or if the bullet had traveled just slightly higher or to the side, one of those three friends would have been lying dead on the forest floor within seconds, bleeding out while the others screamed desperately for help that might never have arrived in time. This encounter is a bone-chilling, stomach-turning reminder that when you are out hunting, the deadliest threat is sometimes not the animal you are tracking at all. Sometimes the real monster is already there, hiding just out of sight, another human being who is supposed to be on the same side but is already pointing a loaded gun in your direction without even knowing it. The sheer randomness and closeness of that bullet still haunts everyone who has ever seen the raw footage. On July 24, 2012, a strange, deeply unsettling, and completely unnatural clip went viral across the internet. A man named Devin was on a combined fishing and camping trip near Bridgeport with his friend. They had been walking back toward their campsite after a long day, chatting casually, enjoying the peaceful woods. Everything felt perfectly ordinary until they spotted a deer standing in the distance. At first it looked like any other deer, but something about its posture and movements immediately felt deeply wrong. Too aggressive, too focused, too predatory. Suddenly, without any provocation, the deer bolted forward and charged straight at Devin's friend with terrifying speed. The two men stumbled backward in complete shock, hearts racing, trying to understand what was happening. The deer stopped for a moment, then charged again, and again, refusing to back off, eyes wild and glazed, hoofs pounding the ground like it had lost its mind. They tried everything, backing away slowly, calling out in calm voices, waving their arms. But the animal kept coming like something straight out of a nightmare, looking feral and almost rabid. For a deer, which is normally shy and gentle, this kind of repeated, aggressive attack is completely unnatural and deeply disturbing. Maybe it was protecting a hidden fawn nearby. Maybe it was sick with some disease that had driven it insane. Or maybe something far darker and unexplained was happening in those woods that day. Whatever the true reason, the two men were forced to keep retreating through the forest while this normally harmless animal continued its relentless assault, coming at them over and over again. The footage feels profoundly wrong the entire time you watch it, like the natural order of the world had suddenly broken and something evil had taken its place for those few terrifying minutes. Even years later, the video still leaves viewers with an icy, lingering dread that refuses to go away. On December 17, 2019, Aaron from the popular channel The Hunting Public lived through what is quite possibly the single most terrifying and heart-stopping moment ever captured on a hunting camera. It was the very first morning of deer season in Iowa. Aaron had just purchased a brand new high-end scope and was genuinely excited to kick off the season the right way. He hiked deep into the woods before sunrise, full of anticipation. But almost immediately everything went horribly wrong. An absolute army of other hunters, nearly a dozen of them, had flooded the exact same ridge he had carefully scouted the night before. Aaron tried to move away quickly, circling the long ridge to put as much distance as possible between himself and the crowd. He finally found what he thought was a safe spot far around the other side. As the sun slowly rose and light began filtering through the trees, deer started moving. Then the nightmare unfolded right in front of him. A group of deer suddenly ran directly between Aaron and another hunter who had now appeared on the opposite side. That hunter raised his gun and aimed straight at the deer, which meant he was aiming straight through Aaron's body. Aaron was completely wide open, wearing bright orange, standing in plain sight. He watched in absolute horror through his binoculars as the other hunter's gun barrel swung and locked onto the exact line of fire that passed directly through his chest. Aaron started whispering desperately under his breath, "Don't shoot! I'm right here. Please don't shoot." The gun stayed pointed directly at him. Then the shot rang out. Bullets and slugs ricocheted violently off the ridge all around Aaron's position. His heart nearly stopped beating. One careless movement, one eager trigger pull at the wrong second, and that bullet would have torn straight through him, killing him instantly. He later admitted on camera that he had never been so scared in his entire life in the woods. This is exactly why hunters are required to wear bright orange during gun season, because in the chaotic madness of opening day, when too many people are crammed into too small an area chasing the same animals, the difference between a successful hunt and dying in a pool of your own blood on the forest floor is measured in nothing more than a few terrifying inches and one moment of human stupidity. On March 4, 2023, the hugely popular YouTube channel Outdoor Boys posted a winter camping clip that still gives grown adults full-body chills and nightmares. Luke took his young son Jacob deep into the remote Alaskan mountains for a classic father-son hammock camping trip in the snow. They set up their shelter carefully, cooked hot dogs over a small portable stove, laughed together, and got cozy inside their thin fabric walls as the long Arctic night began to close in. Luke stepped outside briefly to gather more firewood, the fire crackling warmly, the freezing darkness pressing in from all sides. Then, just as his little boy was starting to drift off to sleep inside the hammock, the sounds began, low, guttural growls and eerie howls from a small pack of wolves that had silently circled their tiny camp. The animals were terrifyingly close. Only a single thin layer of fabric separated a father and his young son from a group of wild predators powerful enough to tear through their shelter in seconds and end both their lives in a bloody frenzy. Luke stayed perfectly motionless and silent, heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears, doing absolutely everything possible not to wake Jacob or provoke the wolves into attacking. He listened in frozen terror as the pack moved around them in the snow, their paws crunching softly, their breath visible in the freezing air. For long, agonizing minutes, the danger was absolute and overwhelming. One wrong sound, one curious wolf deciding to investigate the shelter more closely, and this beautiful father-son camping trip would have ended in the most unimaginable horror imaginable. Eventually, the wolves moved on into the darkness, but those few minutes of pure vulnerability, a thin wall of fabric between them and certain death, remain one of the most chilling real-life moments ever filmed in the wild. Finally, Justin K., a well-known Florida hunting YouTuber famous for pursuing wild boar with either a 1911 handgun or a traditional bow, ran headfirst into something he was absolutely not prepared for. He spotted a large boar in the thick brush, carefully lined up his shot with his handgun, and fired what should have been a clean, decisive hit. At first it looked successful. Then the wounded animal suddenly exploded toward him in a blind, furious, unstoppable charge. Wild boar are not cute little forest animals. They are built like living tanks, incredibly fast, insanely strong, armed with razor-sharp tusks and a bite force capable of crushing bones and ripping flesh. Justin kept his nerve under extreme pressure and fired again and again as the massive pig closed the distance in a rage, blood streaming from its wounds, eyes locked on him with pure animal fury. He managed to stop the beast just in time, but those few heart-stopping seconds of a charging, wounded, half-ton boar coming straight at you with death in its eyes are enough to make any experienced hunter's blood turn to ice. If his shots had been even a fraction of a second slower or even slightly less accurate, Justin would have been gored, trampled, and torn apart right there on camera in one of the most brutal ways possible. These 6 encounters were never staged or scripted. They were filmed in real time by real hunters who believed they were in complete control of the situation, until the wilderness itself reached out and reminded them, in the most brutal and terrifying ways imaginable, that they had never been in control at all. One single second you are the hunter. The next single second you are the prey. The woods do not care about your expensive new scope, your bright orange vest, your careful plans, or your excited anticipation. They only care about one thing: who survives. And sometimes survival itself is nothing more than pure, freezing, heart-stopping luck measured in nothing more than a monster's momentary hesitation or a bullet's random path through the air. Sleep well tonight if you still can. But remember, out there in the dark between the trees, something is always watching. And it is always hungry.